Hello, creatives. Are you a fan of shows like Stranger Things? Do you like things like Gravity Falls? Is the idea of a group of kids discovering strange, weird things and telling that story the thing that gets you excited? Well, if it is, then I am here to talk about one of my favorite role-playing games, Tales from the Loop. This game is basically the entire premise of it is you're playing a group of kids who are exploring an alternate version of the 1980s and learning all about life and solving mysteries, and there's strange scientific stuff that's going on. And I think not only is it a great game, but I want to talk about some of the things that I've really enjoyed about it in the process of writing the kinds of stories that I write. The tools within it that have helped me whenever I'm trying to develop a world or think through a problem. I'll often turn to this book and look at certain elements of it to give me some inspiration. So this is both my review of it and some tips on how to maybe bring it into not only your game experience, but into your personal creative writing habits. So let's dive into the review. But first, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. My name is Michael Regina. I write and draw horror graphic novels for kids. So my book, The Sleepover, is out currently, and you can pick that up wherever books are sold. And my next book, Deepwater Creek, is coming out this August. So if you like sort of big sea monster horror type stories, Deepwater Creek ought to be a lot of fun, and it means a lot to me, and I hope you'll enjoy it. All right, so I'm actually gonna throw you over to my art table, and we're going to do the remainder of the review over there. So trying a new setup for some of these reviews, because I think it's more fun to like actually see inside of the book than just screen grabs from it. I'm going to do a little bit of a flip through. I'm not going to show everything from it, but just kind of to highlight some of the basics. Like I said, the game is Tales from the Loop. It's set in an alternate 1980s. So it says role-playing in the 80s that never was. And this game does a great job of, in its setting, capturing that very vibe. Before I dive much further, I do want to always say that thank you to Free League, who sent me this copy as a review copy for the game. They're always so great about sending me copies of their games. I purchase a lot of their games as well, and then just when they're always kind enough to send me a game for review, they're just great. So everyone at Free League, you guys are awesome. This game is awesome. Let's dive into it. This is created by the same artist who created The Electric State, Simon Stålenhag. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this game has actually won quite a few awards. It's done really well, and it uses the Year Zero engine for gameplay. So if you're not familiar with that, let me grab some dice and I'll show you how it works. Basically, in the game, characters are going to have stats, and they're going to roll d6 dice to determine whether or not they're successful. The goal in rolling the dice is to get at least 1 6, which counts as a success. So if I roll all of these and I have no 6s like right now, the action that the character undertook was unsuccessful. And within this game, if a character wants to push that luck or push that roll and try again, they can re-roll all the dice and take a condition. So you can see on this re-roll, man, I got 3 6s. So this would be like an extra critical kind of success. So maybe I said as a GM, they only have to get 1 success and they rolled 3. Now they have like a critical success, and we can bring that into the story play of the game. So that's the basics of what the Year Zero engine is. So what makes this game really cool? Well, like I said, the difficulty, well, I'll give you the plus and the minus. The plus is if you are looking for sort of a great sort of like fully fleshed out setting with plenty of details already done for you, this game is awesome. It has a ton of content just detailing the setting itself, so you can see like all the way up to page 46. It's explaining these 2 different settings of where these loops are. So the loops are these scientific facilities where extraordinary things are being done. There is a Swedish loop that's outlined in the game, as well as a version that's within the United States. And what's great about this is it does a really awesome job of just explaining kind of like what's out there and what makes sense within the game. Now, a few things that I think are really cool about this setting is one that it uses it has these big basic principles within the game. So something I really love is it has, and I like when any game sort of includes this, the game has basic principles that it considers that it wants you to talk about with your players before you were to go to play. So the principles within this game and its setting are Your hometown is full of strange and fantastic things. Now, when it talks about strange and fantastic things, it's mostly of like the scientific variety. It's not, this game has a technological bent to it. So you are thinking about technology, strange technology, and ways science has pushed the fabrics of reality, but it's not necessarily like, you know, straight up monsters or something. Like dinosaurs roam in the setting and stuff because of scientific experiments that went wrong. But this idea that your city is full of strange and wondrous type things. Everyday life is dull and unforgiving. So when you're thinking about building your characters out, you are thinking specifically about just ordinary kids that are living their ordinary life, and then extraordinary things happen to them. So you're not wanting to necessarily make specifically extraordinary things a part of the general makeup of your characters, for example. The adults are out of reach and out of touch. Now, this one is mostly keying in around the idea that the kids are supposed to be alone. They're not necessarily supposed to be able to turn for help from parents and this sort of thing. I have played through an entire campaign with this game using one of the campaign books that they sent me. And we had a parent as an integral part of the story, but I largely tried to leave it up to the kids to get in and out of their own shenanigans. The land of the loop is dangerous, but the kids will not die. So this is an interesting component of the game. Your characters cannot die. Obviously, I don't think that's a terrible thematic decision, given the fact that you're playing with kids that are typically between the ages of like 10 and 15. You know, murdering little children, not always the most fun thing you want to put within a game, but it like codifies it within the game. They can take on numerous conditions. They can become hurt. They can become broken within the story, but they will not die. So they might be taken out of action, but the goal is that they would come back to life. The game is played scene by scene. So, and basically what this is saying is like, you work your way through moment to moment, and that it encourages players and the game master to have sort of a back and forth. So a game master might set up a specific scene, but then the players might also set up their specific scene. So the game master might be like, you're at home, this thing happens, some terrible explosion occurs outside in the neighborhood, and now somebody is, you know, dead or something. Like you see your neighbor running, you know, then the question would be, well, what do you do? And so the character might engage with that sort of thing, and then once that scene is over, they might say, hey, based on what happened, I want to go to the police station because I believe my other neighbor is the one who caused that explosion. So it's encouraging a collaborative world building that's going back and forth, which is the final point, that the world described collaboratively. That's a word. Collaboratively. The world is described collaboratively. So it encourages a table that is full of different ideas and working together. And then, like I said, there is an entire group of settings here that just runs you through all of the setting material. So, you know, what is this? What does the 80s looks like? What do kids do during the 80s? What sort of technology exists? What's the difference between the technology that exists within this game world and the ordinary world? And it gives you like a good basis to start. I didn't use a lot of this because I kind of wanted to create or use like this as a general guide, but for me it really was all about like just creating our own world where we used certain elements that felt familiar and exciting, but we also kind of took the game in our own direction. And here's the content for the US loop. So again, plenty of information on building a setting. So here's the stuff that I think makes this game really interesting, and I'll kind of merge this in conversationally with where I think there's some tools within this game that are great for thinking about storytelling. One, I think the principles of this game that I've already mentioned are great principles when thinking about creating content for kid horror or kid sci-fi, which is that the best route, I think, is to invent or play kids who are normal and encounter extraordinary things. So those basic principles, I think, are really awesome. Now, what's also great is that this game leans into different tropes or archetypes for different children that might exist in the world. The different tropes within the game are the bookworm, the computer geek, the hick, the jock, the popular kid, rocker, troublemaker, and weirdo. These are sort of that make up the basic classes, basic classes, or groups of kids you can play. But just to take a look at a couple of them, like when you're creating a world with kid characters, there's a lot of certain considerations that you're bringing into play that, I try to write my kids as basically just, children, as like young adults. So I try not to treat them like kids, but there are certain things that really, being a kid, feel experientially true, and this game does a great job of capturing that, such as, let's take a look at the computer geek. So their key skills. So these are the key areas in which the character is sort of leans into their strengths. So calculating, programming, comprehending, and then an iconic item. So like what's a thing that they carry on them. And then this is the stuff that I always think is interesting, because the core mechanic of any story is really problem, obstacle, and resolution, right? And often it's an external problem that's revealing an internal problem. So the problem with like this character might be, the tough guy hits me. My parents are always arguing. He doesn't even know I exist. And this is like the internal thing that is causing the conflict with the character, but also could be an external thing. So you might dive into, okay, my parents are always arguing. That's the thing that's happening on the outside. What is an internal reaction to that? Now, obviously, when you're role playing, these sort of things tend to take a little bit of a backseat to whatever the mission is. But in thinking through who your character is, this helps you understand, like, what's their emotional state? What's their external state like? Their drive, like what makes them want to do what they want to do. So this character, choose one or make up one. I love puzzles. Peer pressure makes me do it. So why does this character do what they do? And then pride, what is something that they do what is the thing that they're most proud of as a character? So, when the junk hits the fan, I don't back down. I'm the smartest kid in school. So the thing that makes this character who they are. Then it gives you a list of relationships and relationships to other NPCs. And then lastly, the idea of an anchor. So what's the thing that really connects this character, grounds them, and centers them? So for this character, it might be their mother, father, a science teacher, a guy who owns the comic shop. And also the game always does a great job of saying, like, if you're stuck on what to do, just pick something, but if not, you can create your own. And this gives you just the flavor of the character. I find this sort of thing really helpful, because I do think that sort of general archetypes play a role in understanding characters, and I don't think it's a bad thing to lean into them. From there, again, the game really uses sort of a skill tree that is based on the Year Zero engine. So for instance, let's jump over to the back and look at a sample character sheet. So this is a sample character sheet. So you will see here, I'm going to kind of tilt this so this might show up a little bit better. But, you're going to write down the character name, their type, all the details we kind of just went through, and their relationships, their items, what's their iconic item, where's their hideout, where do they spend their time? Like, and a hideout within this game is like, where do the kids go to relax and rejuvenate? And then everything else is built off these attributes, and conditions and skills. So the key attributes of this game are body, tech, heart, and mind. And so what's interesting is, like, tech is an integral part of the character base here. How good are they with technology? So again, going back to, like, this game is very specific about the kind of story it wants to tell with kids. Like, if I were taking, say, Stranger Things as an example and turning it into a game, you would think 80s and kids in the 80s, but I don't think like tech would be a part of it. And so a lot of people consider this game as like Stranger Things, the role-playing game. But I think some of these like very specific nuances within the game make that maybe not quite the right description, but the gist is there. And then within these, you have individual skills that you'll build upon based off those attributes that show you how good or not good they are at certain things. So like the way it might work is, let's say body has an attribute level of 3, and then their sneak is like 2. You would roll a total of 5d6. Let me grab them. Character is trying to sneak into the lab. You would roll the 5d6. If you got a 6, they would be successful. If not, they failed. Or, they could push their luck again. Like I mentioned earlier, they got 1-6. Now they've actually advanced. They were successful, but they're going to take a condition or use a luck point, depending on how you choose to push it. And then these also affect the way dice rolls work out, and also change like maybe the role-playing attributes of the game. So if someone's upset, now that that upsetness would be something that a player would want to try to use, and would try to use and build up their storytelling, and like play that character better. Beyond that, I mean, it gives you a great description of like how these different skills work, like how do you utilize them within the game, and if you're trying to think about it. And these sort of things can be great if you're writing your own story or role playing, just because like if you're going to solo play with this game, these things will give you some clues on how to go about doing that and doing the right roles. Now, the mystery part. So one of the things I absolutely love in role-playing games is GM sections that explain to you how to create the adventure for the game that you're playing. Not every game actually does a very good job of this. There are some that just seem to like drop you into the middle of it. They don't tell you how to like formally structure an adventure. Tales from the Loop has a pretty decent one. So this one, it kind of walks you through like, how are you going to create a story within this world? And I'm going to briefly touch on these, but because this is a mixture of like ordinary life and extraordinary things, it does a good job of balancing that. So first thing it comes up with is, hey, you need to figure out what the truth of the mystery is, and it gives you some examples of what that might be. Let's say there's a conflict regarding a student who hates her teacher and decides to take revenge by using her tech skills. So that is maybe the truth of it, is that there all these strange things that are happening within the story are because of this student who doesn't like their teacher. And you will use that as the basis to sort of build out everything else. And then you also want to see, like, what does my character look like when they're just existing and living an ordinary life? So it talks about how to live ordinary life and examples of scenes that might entail. Gives you some ideas on how to build group and individual scenes. So like sometimes a scene might be specifically focused on one character and what they're doing at home, and then changing that up. An overview of the mystery. So then this gets into how do you actually do that? So I'm just going to go through this real quickly because it sort of sums it all up. You're going to introduce the kids to each, you give each kid their own scene. So good idea to like let us see every kid in their own place, introduce the mystery, solve the mystery. So you're going to introduce the problem of the story. So like in that example that we just gave, maybe the teacher gets injured in the middle of class, and like one of the robots within the class hurt them. And that teacher and the kids are going to go investigate, why is the technology acting strange and hurting the teachers? And so then solving the mystery is going to be largely based on like finding clues and doing investigations. So you're going to want to create clues that go along with this. So what are some things that might point to who that kid is and what they're up to? And then one of the interesting things about the way this game does its final conflict is it does this process called a showdown, where basically all the players, the kids are going to talk about a resolution to the adventure that's happened. They're going to use their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to make singular dice rolls to aim for a conclusion. So what I mean by this is like, let's say we've got a very difficult mystery. There's 4 players, or we got a normal mystery. There's 4 players. The difficulty level to beat this would be 8 successes, so 2 times the numbers of players. And let's say my tech-savvy computer worm, in this particular example, his contribution to this scene is he's going to run over, grab the robot that's malfunctioning, and try to reprogram it so that it actually will listen to them and stop attacking the teacher. And all the players are trying to get a pool of successes up to that amount. So we've said 8. So let's say this character, he rolls, man, he got a 6, or he got 1 6, so he's adding 1 success to that pool, but we know this is the final countdown, so he wants to push that luck and roll again. It didn't work out. He only has the 1 6, but now the other 3 players are going to add their contributions to the story, roll 1 time, or push luck, or whatever the case might be, and basically arrive at the total number of successes. So he's got 1, the other 3 players have to try to make this up and try to get 7 successes total. So it's a really fun narrative way. It doesn't draw the action out for too long. It stays very focused. And then lastly, what does the aftermath of that adventure look like? How are the characters different? So again, stories start with characters in one place, they end with a character in another. So how do they change as a result of that mystery? You can change their relationships, their items, their pride, like the thing that they care about, all that good stuff. And then they gain experience points and level up. And then the game does a cool job of explaining like what a mystery countdown is. So like a mystery map. So like in this one example, like there's maybe 2 clues, and then they could follow that clue to get to clue 3, and then the final showdown. And it walks you through like how you might set that up. This countdown thing is something I've seen a lot of games use, where you're building on a mystery this way. And I think my only reservation about this, like if we're thinking about using this as a storytelling device or as a storytelling aid, is the goal of this is like if the characters don't get involved, what happens? And so it's very RP. So like let's say that the characters get caught up on one clue within the mystery. And they're not addressing a different problem that you've set up. You would explain to the characters how is the situation getting worse through their inaction. And I don't know how useful that is, honestly, when it comes to like writing a story, but like having an idea of a progressing escalation of action is a useful thing. And within the game, it propels the characters forward so that they are not stagnant and like goofing off in the mall buying stuff. Things are going to keep getting worse outside. Has some great tips on how to set the mood and nostalgia, how to gain experience points, some ideas of items. And then in the back half of it, it has a handful of mysteries for you to play through. And it gives you some examples of what this might look like, which is always super useful. And it even has a sort of like larger campaign rules and so on. So I'm going to take it back over to the desk to talk about a conclusion. So what are my final thoughts on the Tales from the Loop role-playing game? I think it's a ton of fun. I've had a lot of fun playing with my kids and other kids and adults and the whole like. It's always great fun to just sort of have like a weird sort of Goonies style thing. And with all role-playing games, you're always free to like change things and do whatever different. I actually played through the entire campaign setting. They grow up so fast. Also sent to me by Free League, so thank you with this. I played through this entire thing with my kids, and we had a great time. It's a very sort of like E.T. type story where the kids encounter a strange creature and over the course of an entire year go about trying to protect it and keep it from being found by the scientists who work at the Loop. And it led to just a ton of fun. It was the first full campaign that I've completed with my kids, and yeah, it was great. It was like the perfect amount of length. It's really only like 4 main adventures long. And so I definitely recommend checking it out. I've played both this and Kids on Bikes, which is a game that's often also talked about in the same vein of like the Stranger Things type thing game. And honestly, I like Tales from the Loop more. I think the Kids on Bikes game does a great job with certain aspects of things, but with Tales from the Loop, so give an example, not than just saying that. I love how Kids on Bikes builds its world building. Like you create the world with other players, but like the resources within the game about building worlds and like creating characters were helpful. But I wasn't a big fan of Kids on Bikes, like the core mechanic of the game of using different dice for attributes, mostly because it put a lot of pressure on the GM to figure out whether something was a success or not. Whereas Tales from the Loop, the year 0 system is always very straightforward. Knowing when you hit a 6 on a dice is a fun thing. People can see it. They're like, I succeeded, I got the 6. And then it's still like challenging enough that if that the probabilities of failure are decent. So it's great. Now, as far as using it for writing and this sort of thing, Tales from the Loop is so setting specific that it's a challenging book for me to recommend from the standpoint of using to like write your own stories and stuff. But you could use like the character creation process and some of the world building and the questions and stuff to help flesh out your kid-based story. So I definitely recommend it from that perspective. But overall, like as a game, it's great. But I often like to talk about how to use these things in creating and that sort of deal. So I just want to throw that in there. It's a very specific, like, I love the One Ring role-playing game. It's a great game, but again, it's very Lord of the Rings, and so you can't help play it without thinking about Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings and all that sort of thing. So great game, some helpful stuff inside of it that I think is worth checking out. I want to do more solo play content on my channel, so I think I'm going to try to do a brief session with the game so you guys can get a sense of what it's like, and hope that'll be useful. So those are my thoughts on Tales from the Loop. I've been meaning to get to this review for a long time. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I wanted to share that with you. So if you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe. Throw a comment. What's your favorite role-playing game in this? Have you played Tales from the Loop? And I will see you all next time. Bye.